Do come in. Welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Chaz Legidello.
This week, one of Joe Biden's top pollsters joins us to talk about the president's sagging popularity.
And there's been another dropout from the Republican primary race ahead of tomorrow's fourth debate. We'll be also staging our own Planet America debate as well. But first...
Well, it finally happened.
On this vote, the yeas are 311, the nays are 114, with 2 recorded as present. 2/3 voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted, and a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Which is a roundabout way of saying...
The House voting to expel George Santos, the New York Republican, whose short time in Congress has been buffeted by a series of legal and ethical controversies and accusations.
Which is another roundabout way of saying...
He's a liar and a thief.
Something like about Chris Christie, he does get to the point. So does former Santos House colleague Mark Molinaro.
He has manufactured his entire life to defraud the voters of his district an honest choice for a member of Congress. He has lied to donors and to colleagues, taking advantage of election law, using campaign funds to personally benefit himself.
As you might recall, Santos lied about his education, his past employment, his family history, his faith, his various aliases and alter egos, pretty much everything. Yet somehow he slipped through the vetting and won what had been a Democrat district last year. The 35-year-old is now facing 23 federal charges, including conspiracy, wire fraud, false statements, falsification of records, aggravated identity theft and credit card fraud. If he's found guilty, Santos faces up to 22 years in federal prison, Chaz.
And Santos savoured every moment of the expulsion, John. He was referring to himself in interviews as the Mary Magdalene of Congress because, according to Santos, they're all going to stone this motherfucker because it's just politically expedient. Even though Mary Magdalene wasn't stoned, so that is poor biblical scholarship from Santos.
Add that to the indictments.
Oh, the list is so long. Then he also went on a revenge tour, starting here.
I myself have been a victim of George Santos and as well as other members of Congress in terms of defrauding through public donations. I had received an ethics complaint from the FEC, which I had to spend tens of thousands to defend myself. You, sir, are a crook. I know I should direct my comments to the chair. I yield back.
My colleague wants to come up here, call me a crook. Same colleague who's accused of being a woman beater.
And then in Santos threatening to file a series of revenge ethics complaints against Nicole Maliotakis regarding her questionable stock trading, against Mike Lawler for potential campaign finance violations, and against Nick LaLotta for obtaining a degree in day school while he was supposed to be working at the Board of Elections. I'm not sure if he's going to follow through on any of them, John, but it was a wild last day.
Yeah, it sure was. Well, after his expulsion, as Santos was being ushered out of the Capitol building, he quickly found an upside to being just the 6th person ever kicked out of the House of Representatives.
You know what? As unofficially already no longer a member of Congress, I no longer have to answer a single question.
And Santos reportedly added, "To hell with this place," as he left. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson opposed the expulsion, though, and so did the majority of Republican members. Their already slim and barely functioning majority has now been reduced to just 8.
Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the chair announces to the House that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House is now 434.
Which means Republicans can now only afford to lose 3 Republicans on any party line vote. Now, cynics might suggest that that was the real reason that Speaker Mike Johnson opposed the expulsion, but Johnson offered other reasons.
There are people who say you have to uphold the rule of law and allow for someone to be convicted in a criminal court before this tough penalty would be exacted on someone. That's been the precedent so far. There are others who say, well, upholding the rule of law requires us to take this step now because some of the things that he's alleged to have done, the House Ethics Committee having done their job, are infractions against the House itself.
And a few Democrats did agree with Johnson. Congressman Al Green, for instance, reasoned that the people ought to decide whether a person who has not been adjudicated as a criminal could be removed from the House of Representatives. He said that he thought for Congress to have this awesome power that allows us to be judge, jury, prosecutor, investigator, was ripe for abuse. And he highlighted African Americans as potential future victims of this precedent because he said they are amongst the most vulnerable. And just to prove Mike Johnson right, John Fetterman went on TV the very next day to call for indicted New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez to be expelled as well, using the brand new shiny George Santos precedent.
If you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And, you know, Santos's kind of lies were almost, you know, funny. And like, you know, he, you know, landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, you know, I think, you know, Menendez, I think, is really a senator for Egypt, you know, not New Jersey. So I really think he needs to go.
Fetterman didn't leave it there either. Santos has already begun his new career as a spokesperson for hire on Cameo.
Hey, Daniela. Hey, James and Sophia. Hey, Fantasy Football League. Attention all sussy rumblers. Hey, you beautiful bastard. Lots of love, George Santos. Mwah.
$300 Australian if you're interested, like John Fetterman was. So unbeknownst to Santos, Fetterman hired Santos to make a point. Fetterman says, I thought my ethically challenged colleague, Bob Menendez, could use some encouragement given his substantial legal problems, so I approached a seasoned expert on the matter to give Bobby from Jersey some advice.
Hey, Bobby. Look, I don't think I need to tell you, but these people that want to make you get in trouble and want to kick you out and make you run away, you make them put up or shut up. You stand your ground, sir, and don't get bogged down by all the haters out there. Stay strong. Merry Christmas.
And apparently Santos posted that message in only 16 minutes. Bravo, Fetterman, bravo.
Yes, well played, sir. Meanwhile, New York's Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul has announced today a special election for the now vacant Long Island district will be held on February 13th next year. It is likely to be highly competitive and have tens of millions of dollars spent on it. President Biden's sagging poll numbers, meanwhile, and the remarkable buoyancy of 91 times indicted and twice impeached former President Donald Trump has been causing a lot of concern in Democratic circles of late. The latest round of hand-wringing began last month with this.
Times Siena College poll shows Trump leading in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states that could be decisive. The margins are between 4 and 10%.
Of greatest concern, Biden showing weakness in some key demographics, including younger voters.
An NBC News poll finds for the first time former President Trump now has a 4-point lead among voters ages 18 to 34. This is a massive bit of information.
In fact, a series of polls in November, a year out from the presidential election, found Trump leading Biden in national head-to-head contests, 2 of them by as much as 6 points. Well, this week, 2 polls had a glimmer of hope for those fretful Democrats. Biden back in front by 1 point in the Morning Consult weekly tracking poll and up by 2 in the fortnightly YouGov poll, although both are within their respective margins of error. And just as the scribes were probably sharpening their pencils for a Biden comeback piece, 2 more national polls dropped, with Trump in front by 4 in a messenger poll and ahead by 2 in a tip poll, which had unnamed other candidates drawing 13% support. And yes, Chaz, presidents can certainly stage a comeback. Polls almost a year out are a snapshot, not a prediction. In December 2019, Biden was leading Trump by 10 points in the average of polls. He won by 4.5. And 11 months out from the 2012 election, President Barack Obama was less than 1 point in front of Mitt Romney. He ended up winning by a shade under 4. Still, worrying times for Biden supporters, Chaz.
Absolutely. We've mentioned this a few times this season. The economy keeps on improving. Last quarter's growth was at an annual pace of 5.2%, the fastest quarterly growth since the pandemic recovery. And the headline inflation rate last month was 0, down from 0.4% the month before. Over the last 12 months, the inflation rate's 3%. That's the lowest annual inflation rate in 2.5 years. And inflation's rapidly falling towards the Federal Reserve's target level of 2%. So that is all wonderful. But like John says, it ain't filtering through to the polling. consumer confidence is so much lower than you would expect given the state of the economy. Financial journos have even found a way to put numbers to it, mapping out what you'd expect consumer confidence to be given the economy versus what it actually is. In, say, for instance, France there. You can see the two lines are very similar there. The expected and actual figures match in Germany as well there, and in the UK as well there. But in America, there is a huge gap between the expected consumer confidence and the actual consumer confidence. That's the red line. That economic confidence gap between the red and blue line opened up around about 2020. So, what created that gap? Well, the first thing economists have noted is that if you divide consumer sentiment by party affiliation and then you compare those results to the expected consumer sentiment, you can see that Democrats have higher than expected consumer sentiment during Democratic administrations and lower than expected consumer sentiment during Republican administrations. And Republicans are the direct opposite. But look how Republican peaks and troughs are so much bigger. They cheer louder and they boo louder than Democrats do. So to quantify that, when a Republican is president, Republicans feel about 15 index points better than expected, and Democrats feel about 6 index points worse. But when a Democrat is president, Republicans feel about 15 index points worse than expected, and Democrats only feel about 6 index points better. So that lopsided partisanship has created some of that economics confidence gap, but not all of it. Even after adjusting for the partisanship, that only shrinks the gap by 30%. So there's still 70% left over, and that's when it gets really interesting. Because if we look at only Biden voters in swing states, we can see that only 11% of Biden voters who are 18 to 29 believe the economy is good or excellent. That's the leftmost column. As you go across, you'll see the older these Biden voters get, the more they like the economy. But the young Biden voters at the end there, they might as well be Republicans. So why is that? Some people point to TikTok. They say economic despair dominates social media, where young people fret about the cost of living. But if that was the only reason why young people's views are so negative, then surely it would be affecting other countries as well. They have TikTok in France and Germany and the UK. It's not affecting them. There is another theory though. Unlike other countries, America hasn't seen any inflation of note since the early 80s, which means no American under the age of 50 has really experienced inflation at all. So 2/3 of the country has never lived through an inflation spike. So maybe that is why so many people, especially young people, freak out when they see it now requires $119 to buy the same goods and services that $100 would have bought you before the pandemic, at least according to Bloomberg. And since early 2020, prices have risen about as much as they had in the full decade before the pandemic. And maybe that's also why Biden has created the Supply Chain Resilience Council to come up with programs tied to the production and shipment of goods. Now you might be wondering, supply chains, where did they come from? I thought we were talking about inflation. Supply chain issues are huge when it comes to inflation. Look at this graph. If we index the supply chain pressures on the economy but lag it by 6 months, you'll see that that maps almost perfectly with the inflation rate. So supply chain issues are a large part of the story. And this might also explain why Biden is carrying on like this.
Let me be clear. To any corporation that's not brought their prices back down, even as inflation has come down, even as supply chains have been rebuilt, it's time to stop the price gouging and give the American consumer a break.
Now, I'm not saying there's been no price gouging over the last few years. There's been some. But to be clear, when the annual rate of inflation cools, that does not mean falling consumer prices. It only means that prices are rising at a lower rate. So prices not falling is not necessarily an indication of gouging. But bottom line, Biden is just trying anything he can to make that stubborn economics confidence gap just that little bit smaller.
Yeah, I suppose if there's nothing that you can do, you can at least be seen to try and do something, anything. Well, for more, we're joined by one of Joe Biden's longtime pollsters and a legend amongst Democrat political strategists, Celinda Lake. Celinda, welcome back to Planet America.
Great to be back again. Thank you so much.
So the public polling that we in the media typically get to see is almost universally bad for Joe Biden in the head-to-heads and on key issues like the economy, handling of the war in the Middle East and so on. You get to see a lot more internal and private polling. Is it painting any different a picture to you?
Well, everything is looking bad for everyone right now, frankly. People are pretty dissatisfied with the direction of the country. People don't like Trump. They don't like Biden. They don't like themselves that much. They don't like their mother-in-law. They don't like their father-in-law. Americans are really grumpy going into the holidays. The Supreme Court rating is an all-time low. Only 9% of Americans think the American dream is going to be there for their kids. So in general, I would say all we see is negative numbers. But I think when you look underneath, there are some real signs of hope for the Democrats.
So how much of Biden's polling problems do you think are just entirely about the economy? And if it is a problem and the economy continues to improve, how long do you think it will take before that finally filters through to Biden's polling?
Oh, it's a great question. So I think a lot of it is related to the economy and more people's perception of the direction of the economy. So I think there is plenty of time. I think the key number to look at is where do people think the economy is headed in May of next year? That's the strongest predictor of the vote. And we have a lot of time to turn that around. We've had months of record job creation. We have zero inflation last month. So I think if we have 6 months of good news, we'll be in good shape.
Celinda, according to the New York Times, Biden has a 76-20 lead amongst young voters either registered as Democrats or who have previously voted in a Democratic primary. In other words, he's lost 20% of the young voters who he should have. So, for a start, does that accord with what you've observed? And secondly, how much of a concern is that?
The youth vote's a real concern, and there are two factors. The biggest factor right now is the Israel-Palestine war. And young people, I've never seen an age gap in the data the way we have with, 70% of young people disapproving of Israel and 65% of seniors approving of Israel. There's just never been that kind of age gap in the U.S. since we've had polling data. So we're looking right now at numbers where those young voters are going to be particularly alienated. And we have three concerns, not only who do they vote for, but whether they turn out at all and whether they vote for a third party. So I think the youth vote is a very serious concern. I do think as this war, we get over this period, I think it will be better. I think the administration has been much more vocal about putting pressure on for humanitarian aid and ceasefires. But there is no question that we have some problems with young voters. And of all the data, all the bad numbers you're going to share with me, that's the one I'm probably the most concerned about.
Celinda, I don't want to harp on Biden's age problem, but by US government data, somebody who turned 65, retirement age in 2007, like Joe Biden, born in 1942, can be expected to live 18 further years. That means he can be expected to die in 2025. This is an issue that is not going away. How do you get around that?
Well, if you did the same statistics and you factor in a man who eats a Big Mac every day, i.e. Donald Trump, he'd be dying too. So maybe we should look at the vice president. Joe Biden has great health care. He exercises and keeps himself in shape. And he has a wonderful vice president. So I think it's going to be fine. I think that he is older, so is Donald Trump. A lot of voters would like the next generation of leadership, but that's going to be the ticket on both sides. And I think we're in an era where some of Joe Biden's experience and wisdom in foreign policy and dealing with threats abroad is going to be really valued by voters.
Celinda Lake, we always appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us on Planet America.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure.
There's a feeling in the air that you can't get anywhere except in Iowa.
It's November 10th, 2007, a Saturday. It's still almost 1 year until the next presidential election, but less than 2 months before the Iowa caucuses, the first vote to decide who the candidates will be. In Iowa's capital, Des Moines, it is the night of the Jefferson-Jackson Dinner, a major Democratic Party fundraiser, a test of the candidates' organisational strength and the enthusiasm of their supporters. National polls give former First Lady and New York Senator Hillary Clinton a massive lead over Senator Barack Obama and others, but the polls in Iowa are closer. Some show Obama in front. And tonight, Clinton has a cold. Her speech is slow and flat.
We must nominate a nominee who's been tested and elect a president who is ready to lead on day one.
That barb is clearly aimed at Obama, who was in the Senate for barely a year before running for president.
Change is just a word if you don't have the strength and experience to make it happen.
But Obama has his own problems: stagnant national polls, uninspiring debate performances, and so far he's failed to recapture that magic that propelled him onto the national stage 3 years earlier with a speech at the Democratic Convention.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
The Jefferson-Jackson dinner speeches have dragged on for almost 4 hours by the time 3,000 fired-up Obama supporters fill the seats around the Veterans Memorial Auditorium. Despite the late hour, the Illinois senator is in his element.
In this election, in this moment, let us reach for what we know is possible. A nation healed, a world repaired, an America that believes again. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Obama promises an end to division and the politics of the past. It strikes some as naive, but for growing numbers of voters, Obama's message of hope and change is striking a chord, and that winter, he wins Iowa's caucuses.
Years from now, you'll look back and you'll say that this was the moment. This was the place where America remembered what it means to hope.
Obama defeats Hillary Clinton for the nomination, and as the global financial crisis hits the following autumn, he wins the presidency over John McCain. The campaign that swept America and inspired the world first found its voice that November night in Des Moines. The fourth Republican presidential candidate debate is on in Tuscaloosa, Alabama tomorrow, to be hosted by News Nation and a grab bag of largely conservative outlets, including Rumble and the Washington Free Beacon. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie looked in danger of missing this debate after failing to reach the 6% poll threshold until yesterday. Squeaked in. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and tech CEO Vivek Ramaswamy have also made the cut. So 4 on stage. Former President Donald Trump easily qualified, but he's expected to attend a fundraiser in Florida instead. Also missing will be North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum.
Some breaking news in the world of politics. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum is now ending his presidential campaign.
And Doug has a bone to pick with the Republican Party.
Now, he is blaming the Republican National Committee for what he calls arbitrary debate qualifications, among them drawing donations from 80,000 individuals, including at least 200 donors from at least 20 different states.
Well, Doug Burgum gamed those rules to make the first 2 debates. New donors who sent at least $1 were promised a $20 gift card mailed to their address by the Burgum campaign in exchange for their donation. But it's harder to juice the polls. So it is time to bring out the old Guess Who board once again and say, see you later, Doug Burgum. There he goes, Chance.
Full credit to the Guess Who board, though, for knowing who Doug Burgum is.
Voters sure didn't.
The question, though, is Ron DeSantis' time to slam down on the Guess Who board approaching.
Ooh.
Nikki Haley has been accruing a bunch of big donors this week, I have to say, and just in the last 3 weeks alone, DeSantis' super PAC has lost its way, as well as its chief executive, its chair, its replacement for the chief executive, its director of operations, and its communications director. The one that hurt the most, though, was Adam Laxalt stepping down as chair of DeSantis' super PAC. Laxalt's supposed to be one of DeSantis' closest friends. They were even roommates together during naval officer training. Et tu, Laxalt. So look, so that's not ideal for DeSantis only 6 weeks before Iowa. On the other hand, DeSantis did finish his tour of Iowa's 99 counties this week, hoping to inject some enthusiasm into his campaign. So with that kind of commitment and that kind of chaos, it might be all in for DeSantis in Iowa.
And he's putting his chips down there.
Totally. And this debate tomorrow, that means, could be really important for him.
Yeah.
Unlike the fizzer debate this week on Fox News between DeSantis and California Governor Gavin Newsom, we were talking there someone who's not going to win versus someone who's not going to run. But they held it anyway. And look, I was pleased, at least, I have to say, to receive a last-second invitation to moderate that debate.
Not Hannity.
No, forget him. I did a pretty good job too, I've got to say. See what you think.
And welcome to Hannity, and tonight...
Sorry, Hannity, we've got some bad news.
I will not be part of the debate.
But Rupert said he did have a more important job for you.
I don't want to be the hall monitor. Please don't turn me into that.
Sorry, buddy, not my call. Gavin, Ron, hi, I'm Chaz from ABC Australia, and, okay, clearly you haven't heard of us. Ron, we're kind of like if Antifa had their own TV channel.
All good.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that, Gavin. Now, for the first question...
What are we actually doing here?
Well, yeah, Gavin. I mean, this is Fox News. Don't you think that's going to hurt your polling in California?
I don't think it. I know it. And the data bears that out in the state of California.
Okay, but what about you, Ron? What are the odds that you appearing in this loser debate against someone who isn't even running might hurt your presidential campaign?
The odds are 100%. Of course our enemies are going to take advantage of this.
Yeah, but your campaign was struggling even before this. So how can you reinvent yourself?
Hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and a sex change operation.
I don't think that's going to work in the Republican Party for you, Ron. Look, the reason why your campaign's struggling is because you can't smile. So can you please put those concerns to rest by just smiling naturally for just, 10 seconds? Here, I'll time you. Come on, 10 seconds, go. Naturally, I said. More naturally than that, Ron. Come on. Just 10 seconds. You're almost there. Did that smile work for you, Gavin?
I'm impressed and I'm grateful.
Ron, I think it might be time for us to talk about you quitting the presidential race. What are you going to do with all that spare time?
Plot the human feces that are found on the streets of San Francisco.
Well, each to their own. I understand you've also written a children's book.
I actually have something that I brought.
Hang on, Ron.
This is a book that's in some of the schools in California.
Ron, we can't do ads on the ABC.
Some of it's blacked out. You would not probably be able to put this on air. This is pornography.
Ron, why are you trying to show us porn?
That even Donald Trump said it was too extreme.
Save it for SBS then, mate. Look, Gavin, we're running out of time, so do you have anything you'd like to say to Ron?
Appreciate your wife.
You can't hit on Ron's wife during a debate, Gavin. What are you doing?
You know what? We all want to be loved. We need to be loved. We all want to be protected, respected, and connected.
Well, that was quite the curveball. Ron, do you think you can top that?
I'm Gavin Newsom's father-in-law.
Huh?
I can handle that. I can handle it. I'm used to that. I can handle it.
You don't sound like you can handle it. Ron, you always make things weird. But gentlemen, thanks for joining us. That is how you moderate.
I've seen worse, yes, for sure. That's it for another trip to Planet America. We will be back, though, at the same time next week.
We're going to have a wrap of tomorrow's GOP debate with Republican strategist Ford O'Connell joining us on Friday's Fireside Chat on ABC News, as well as a brand new PEP out tonight. You can check it here in all the usual pod places. See you later.